My name is Linda Harper, and at 54, I thought I had mastered the art of navigating complex professional landscapes. After divorcing David, reclaiming my home, asserting my boundaries with my children, and even embarking on a profound personal sabbatical, I returned to Chicago and continued to build Harper Creative, my graphic design firm. My work with prominent clients, especially my consulting for Lumensphere, had solidified my reputation. I was a respected leader, a mentor to younger designers, and genuinely, deeply fulfilled. The internal clarity forged by menopause and a lifetime of subtle dismissals meant I saw professional disrespect not as a personal slight, but as a strategic flaw in the perpetrator. My firm was hired to lead a major rebranding project for a huge, old-guard Chicago-based manufacturing company, Sterling Innovations. This was a challenging but lucrative project, one that demanded both strategic vision and careful diplomacy. I chose Mark, my son, now 27, a rising star in brand strategy, to be my co-lead. We had forged a strong professional partnership, a relationship built on mutual respect. This project was our next big test. But then came Marcus Thorne. He was the VP of Marketing at Sterling Innovations, a man in his late 40s who wielded his corporate power with casual arrogance. From our very first meeting, he treated me not as a seasoned professional, but as an aging, overly sentimental mom figure. Every idea I presented was met with subtle dismissals, every observation with a condescending smile. My frustration simmered, but I held it in check. I had navigated patriarchal arrogance before. Then came the crisis meeting, a crucial moment where the pressure was immense. The night he looked at me, my frustration boiling over into controlled anger, and, with a dismissive wave of his hand, he called me too emotional. He thought he was asserting his dominance, publicly dismantling my authority in front of my team, my son, and the client's senior executives. He thought he was putting the older woman back in her place. He had no idea that in calling me too emotional, he had just given me a very clear, very cold objective. He wanted me out? Fine. But he was about to learn that when you try to sideline a strategic mind, that mind doesn't just retreat. It takes the game, the ball, and the entire team to another stadium. This is the story of how my boss's casual sexism became the catalyst for a betrayal he would never see coming. Before I tell you every single, meticulously planned, and ultimately devastating detail of how I turned that public humiliation into a professional masterstroke, I want to invite you into this space. If you've ever felt that your experience, your voice, or your passion was dismissed with condescending labels in the workplace, if you've ever been told you're too sensitive or too emotional for simply having strong opinions, then hit that subscribe button. This channel is a sanctuary for the undervalued, a gathering place for women who are reclaiming their power and proving that true leadership knows no age. You won't want to miss seeing how this unfolds. Part 1. The weight of unseen expertise. My return to Chicago after a restorative year-long sabbatical had infused my life with a fresh, invigorating sense of purpose. My renovated townhouse in Ukrainian Village was a tranquil haven, a perfect counterpoint to the bustling energy of my West Loop design studio. Harper Creative, my graphic design firm, was thriving. My work with prominent clients, including my ongoing strategic consulting for Anya Sharma's Lumensphere, had firmly reestablished my reputation in Chicago's competitive creative and tech industries. At 54, I was more than just a successful businesswoman. I was a respected leader, a mentor to younger designers, and genuinely, deeply fulfilled. The relentless scrutiny of my menopausal journey, once a source of deep anxiety, had burned away any remaining brain fog, leaving me with a razor-sharp clarity, particularly when it came to understanding the subtle dynamics of power and disrespect. My creative philosophy had evolved. I no longer pursued flashy campaigns. Instead, I focused on strategic design that conveyed authenticity and resonated with the deeper values of my clients. This approach had attracted Sterling Innovations, a century-old Chicago-based manufacturing giant. They were a company deeply rooted in tradition but seeking a major rebranding to appeal to a younger, more environmentally conscious market. This was a massive, challenging, and incredibly lucrative project, one that demanded both strategic vision and careful diplomacy. It was a career-defining project, not just for Harper Creative, but for me. To lead this monumental undertaking, I chose Mark, my son, now 27. His career in brand strategy consulting was skyrocketing. Our relationship, once burdened by his youthful entitlement and my subtle accommodations, had transformed into a truly respectful, collaborative partnership. He was bright, innovative, and understood the intricacies of corporate politics in a way I never quite had. This project, blending old-world legacy with modern-day vision, was our next big test, a chance to solidify Harper Creative's reputation as a leader in strategic branding. Our initial meetings with Sterling Innovation's senior leadership were promising. They admired our proposal, our blend of creative vision and strategic rigor. But there was one hurdle: Marcus Thorne. He was the VP of Marketing at Sterling Innovations, a man in his late 40s who embodied the very corporate arrogance I had spent years disentangling myself from. Marcus was impeccably dressed, flawlessly coiffed, and radiated an aura of casual superiority. He had joined Sterling Innovations only recently, brought in to shake things up, but he clearly believed his recent Ivy League MBA and tech sector experience trumped decades of industry wisdom. From our very first meeting, Marcus treated me not as a seasoned professional leading a multi-million-dollar rebranding project, but as an aging, overly sentimental mom figure. It was subtle, insidious, and deeply familiar. He would address his questions directly to Mark, even if I was the one who had just presented the data. He would preface his remarks with phrases like, "Now, Linda, I know this might seem a bit abstract for the traditional approach." When I was the one who pioneered human-centered design in my 20s, he would laugh, a small, dismissive chuckle, whenever I shared an anecdote from my extensive past experience. My frustration simmered, but I held it in check. I had navigated patriarchal arrogance before, from David. I knew how to hold my ground with quiet patience. I just hadn't expected it to rear its head so brazenly in my professional life. Mark, bless him, noticed it immediately. He was appalled. After one particularly condescending exchange, where Marcus interrupted my explanation of qualitative consumer research to ask Mark about the latest Gen Z TikTok trends, Mark pulled me aside. "Mom," he'd said, his voice tight with anger. "He's treating you like you're his little old aunt at Thanksgiving, not the principal of the firm he just hired. It's totally unprofessional." "I know, honey," I'd said, forcing a smile. "I've handled worse. We'll just prove ourselves through the work." My resilience was deeply ingrained. I believed that talent eventually always wins. I had learned to ignore David's constant need to belittle. I could do the same with Marcus. I was used to proving my worth in the quiet. This was just another, larger iteration of that. What I didn't realize was that Marcus Thorne was a different kind of opponent. He didn't just dismiss my experience. He intended to erase it. And this particular project, designed to be my crowning achievement, was about to become the crucible of my deepest humiliation and my most profound, devastating victory. Part 2. The subtle insult and the brewing storm. The subtle dismissals from Marcus Thorne soon morphed into overt acts of disrespect, a gradual escalation that felt designed to undermine my authority and marginalize my role. The project was complex, a comprehensive rebranding of Sterling Innovations, encompassing everything from a new logo and visual identity to packaging design and an entirely new digital presence. My expertise in translating abstract corporate values into compelling visual narratives was crucial. Mark's skill in navigating the corporate hierarchy was essential. We were a formidable team. Marcus Thorne was determined to break it. He began by excluding me from key communications. Important client emails about strategic direction, feedback from focus groups, budget revisions, all went directly to Mark, bypassing me entirely. Mark, uncomfortable with this, would immediately forward them to me. "Mom, he's freezing you out," he'd said, his jaw tight. "I think he wants me to be the lead." I nodded. This was a classic corporate maneuver, attempting to create a power vacuum, to drive a wedge between team members. I, however, knew exactly who the true principal of Harper Creative was.
And it wasn't Mark.
Then came the meeting schedules. Marcus would deliberately schedule urgent calls and brainstorming sessions outside my usual working hours, either late at night or early morning. He knew I preferred to balance my client work with personal time, something I had guarded fiercely since reclaiming my independence. "Oh, Linda's not available?" "No problem. Mark can handle it," he'd say, forcing Mark to carry the burden, knowing I'd be unavailable. It was a transparent attempt to frame me as less available or less committed than a younger, childless professional. My very efforts to define a healthy work-life balance were being weaponized against me. I tried to address it, politely but firmly. During one internal meeting, I brought up the issue of direct communication. "Marcus," I'd said, my voice calm, "it's most efficient if all primary communication regarding strategic direction comes through me. It streamlines the process and ensures consistent messaging to the full team." He'd given me a patronizing smile. "Of course, Linda. I just assume Mark is usually handling those details. He's very hands-on, very quick to respond. I just prefer to deal with the person who has the most bandwidth, you know." Bandwidth. Another subtle dig at my perceived age and my hobby business. He was implying that Mark, younger and unburdened by a family life, had more capacity. He never saw my experience as a strategic advantage, only as an antiquated liability. My frustration simmered, a slow burn just under my skin. The clarity of my postmenopausal mind, once a source of liberating self-awareness, now shone a harsh light on his subtle cruelty. I saw the patterns. I recognized the dismissive language David used to deploy. This was not merely accidental oversight. It was a deliberate strategy to marginalize me, to undermine my leadership, and to eventually, I suspected, force Harper Creative out of the contract, perhaps replacing us with a younger, cheaper, and more compliant firm. He was systematically dismantling my confidence, piece by piece, hoping I would simply shrink away. Mark, bless him, continued to be my most steadfast ally. He would openly challenge Marcus's tactics. He pushed back when Marcus tried to redirect project responsibility solely to him. "Marcus, Linda, is the principal on this project. She runs the final decision-making. I'm her co-lead. Any strategic changes go through her." He defended my authority with a quiet ferocity that made me immensely proud. But his defense, while heartfelt, only seemed to further incense Marcus, hardening his resolve to cut me out entirely. The tensions culminated in a presentation rehearsal for a crucial mid-project client review. It was late on a Wednesday night. Our team, along with Marcus and a few other Sterling Innovations executives, gathered in a cavernous conference room at their downtown office, the lights of the loop glittering like a silent, indifferent audience outside the windows. The pressure was immense. This presentation was going to determine if Sterling Innovations would greenlight the next phase of the rebranding project, a multi-million-dollar investment. I had spent countless hours crafting the core messaging, the emotional narrative. Mark had perfected the data visualization. Everything was going smoothly until we reached the section on the emotional resonance of the new brand identity. This was my forte. I began to speak about the qualitative research findings, about the subtle psychological triggers that differentiate a mere product from a beloved brand. My voice, usually calm and measured, grew passionate as I delved into the nuances of consumer perception. I felt the creative fire ignite within me, the same passion that had defined my early career. I glanced at Marcus. He was sitting at the head of the long conference table, arms crossed, a bored, condescending expression on his face. As I articulated a particularly critical insight about leveraging nostalgia to connect with older consumers, he let out a loud, theatrical sigh. He then looked at the Sterling Innovation CEO, who was sitting beside him. He looked back at me, a dismissive wave of his hand. "Linda," he interrupted, his voice dripping with condescension, "we appreciate your enthusiasm. But honestly, this is becoming a bit much. This is a corporate presentation, not a therapy session. You're getting a bit too emotional." The words landed like a slap in the silent, tense room. Too emotional. His face wore a small, knowing smirk, a look that conveyed, "We all Know what's going on here. Middle-aged woman. Hormones. Overly sensitive. It was the same thinly veiled ageism, the same subtle sexism that David had weaponized against me years ago. Only this time, it was happening in front of my team, my son, and the ultimate client. It was a public, deliberate, profound humiliation. A public declaration of my alleged professional inadequacy. My confidence, which I had painstakingly rebuilt, suddenly felt fragile. The heat, the shame, rushed through me, and in its wake, the familiar, terrifying, but now clarifying, white-hot rage began to build. He had just called me too emotional one last time, and he had no idea what he had just uncorked. Part 3. The architects of treachery. The silence in the conference room after Marcus Thorne's chilling declaration stretched, taut and brittle. It felt as though the very air had been sucked out of the room, leaving behind only the echo of his dismissive words. Too emotional. My face flushed, not with a hot flash, but with a searing wave of profound humiliation. My heart pounded against my ribs, a drumbeat of fury and shame. I felt every eye in the room on me. The Sterling Innovations executives, my own small team, and most agonizingly, Mark, my son, whose jaw was visibly clenched with impotent rage. For a brief, terrifying moment, the old Linda, the one who would shrink, who would apologize, who would try to smooth things over, tried to resurface. She whispered to me, "Just let it go.
Smile. Move on. Don't make a scene."
But her voice was weak, barely a whisper against the roaring fire of righteous indignation now consuming me. This wasn't just a slight. This was a direct, public assault on my professional competence, designed to invalidate my entire presence. It was Marcus Thorne's calculated attempt to dismantle my authority, not just in this project, but in this industry. And he was doing it with casual, confident arrogance. I looked at Marcus Thorne. He wore a small, satisfied smirk, believing he had asserted his dominance. He thought he had put the emotional, older woman back in her place. He had no idea what he had just unleashed. He thought he was simply dealing with a nuisance. He was about to learn that this particular nuisance was a tactical nuclear device. The shame, the frustration, the raw anger, it all coalesced into a single, devastatingly clear thought. You want me out? Fine. But I won't just leave. I will leave with everything you hold dear. This project. This client. Your reputation. The phrase David had used in his betrayal, useless, echoed in my mind, hardening my resolve. I was not useless. I was dangerous. My eyes, usually warm, narrowed into slits of cold, strategic resolve. I gave him a slow, almost imperceptible nod. It was a silent acknowledgement, not of his authority, but of his fatal error. I would play his game, but I would play it to win. The rehearsal concluded quickly. My enthusiasm, my passion, had been publicly doused. Mark tried to pull me aside as we were packing up. "Mom, are you okay?" That was appalling. "I'm going to talk to him. I'm going to talk to the CEO." "No, Mark," I said, my voice quiet, almost ethereal. "You won't. I'll handle it. And I'll handle it my way." My eyes met his, and he saw something in them that made him pause. He saw the cold fire. He saw the shift. He knew this wasn't just anger. This was a plan. I drove home through the glittering lights of downtown Chicago, the usual urban symphony replaced by a silent, focused hum in my ears. The world outside felt distant, unreal. My mind was now consumed with the meticulous details of sabotage. My target wasn't just Marcus Thorne. It was Sterling Innovations itself. The client. This multi-million-dollar rebranding project, the crown jewel of Harper Creative's new portfolio, was about to become the instrument of their unraveling.
I had learned from my past.
From David. From my children. From my brothers. When you faced a calculated attack, emotional responses were weakness. Strategic precision was power. And documentation was currency. I knew Sterling Innovations' weaknesses. For weeks, I had analyzed their internal communications, their quarterly reports, their market positioning. I knew their vulnerabilities better than Marcus Thorne ever would. My postmenopausal brain, far from being foggy, was a ruthless information processor. I pulled into the driveway of my Ukrainian village townhouse. The quiet, tree-lined street was a welcome balm.
My sanctuary.
My base of operations. The temperature in the house was a cool, soothing 65 degrees. Perfect for clear thinking. Perfect for executing cold strategy. My mind raced. How could I dismantle the Sterling Innovations project from within? How could I leverage Marcus Thorne's arrogance against him? How could I make this monumental failure uniquely his? And more importantly, how could I salvage the core essence of the project, the innovative concepts, the powerful brand identity we had created, and take it elsewhere? To a place that truly valued it.
A place that valued me.
The answer, born from a desperate gamble a year prior, resonated with absolute clarity. Innovent Health. My old client. And Sarah Chen, their CEO. I still had a direct line to Sarah Chen, the woman who had first recognized my old-fashioned brilliance and hired me to take down David's career. The woman who valued experience and sharp thinking above all else. My decision was made. I would offer the Sterling Innovations project, the entire concept, to Innovent Health. They were a nimble, innovative company, always looking for strategic advantage. And they needed a top-tier creative firm that truly understood their vision. That firm was Harper Creative. My firm. This wasn't just about taking a client. This was about a professional coup. It was about proving once and for all that my emotional approach was, in fact, the most strategically brilliant of all. And Marcus Thorne, in his arrogant attempt to silence me, was about to become the unwilling architect of his own career's demise. The game had just changed. And I was now playing for the ultimate stakes. Part 4. The strategic counterstrike and the quiet alliance. I didn't sleep that night. My mind was alight, humming with a controlled, exhilarating energy. The humiliation of Marcus Thorne's public dismissal had galvanized me, sharpening my every thought. He thought I was too emotional to lead. He had no idea how precisely my emotions, once chaotic, now fueled a ruthless, strategic intellect. The air in my home office was cool, my monitors glowed, and I felt the exhilarating rush of building something truly powerful. My first act was damage control and internal strategy. I crafted a series of meticulously worded emails to my Harper creative team, particularly Mark. I informed them of an unexpected strategic pivot. Regarding the Sterling Innovations project, citing Marcus Thorne's untenable vision for brand alignment. I assured them that their outstanding work would be repurposed for a new, equally exciting opportunity. I knew Mark, with his business acumen, would read between the lines. He would understand the implication of untenable vision and brand alignment, a diplomatic euphemism for a massive personality clash that undermined the project's integrity. Then the critical call. At 7 a.m. sharp, I called Sarah Chen's direct line at Innovent Health. The early morning hour in Chicago, 5 a.m. for her in San Francisco, indicated the urgency. "Sarah," I said, my voice brisk, professional, and radiating controlled intensity. "This is Linda Harper. I apologize for the early call, but I believe I have an opportunity that is time-sensitive and incredibly valuable to Innovent Health." "Linda." Sarah's voice, surprisingly awake and alert, crackled over the line. "Always a pleasure to hear from you. You're never calling without good reason. What's going on?" I didn't mince words. Sterling Innovations rebranding project. The one Mark and I are leading for Harper Creative. Marcus Thorne just publicly called me too emotional to lead it. There was a pregnant pause. I could almost hear Sarah's shrewd mind working through the implications. She knew Marcus Thorne. She knew his reputation for arrogance and dismissiveness. She also knew my competence. And she certainly knew Sterling Innovations, as they were her competitor in several market sectors. "I see," she said, her voice dropping, a note of grim amusement in it. "Go on." Harper Creative has spent the last 2 months developing a groundbreaking, nuanced rebranding strategy for Sterling Innovations, I explained, choosing my words carefully. It's built on a proprietary understanding of their core values and untapped market segments. It represents a fundamental shift in how they could position themselves for the next century. We have concepts, consumer research, strategic messaging frameworks, all of it. And you're offering this to us? Sarah asked, a distinct note of intrigued curiosity in her voice. I'm offering you a completed, custom-designed strategic brand identity, I clarified. One that, with a minor tweak for your unique mission, could revolutionize how Innovent Health communicates its own values and aspirations. It's a rebranding, effectively, that bypasses all the usual time and cost associated with a project of this scale. All the groundwork is already done. And I paused for emphasis. It would be devastatingly effective if it launched before Sterling Innovations even got off the ground with their own rebrand. The strategic implications were undeniable. Innovent Health, a cutting-edge biotech firm, needed to elevate its brand beyond its core products. Sterling Innovations, a manufacturing giant, was notoriously slow to adapt. If Innovent Health could unveil a bold, visionary rebrand first, one that echoed the very future Sterling Innovations aspired to, it would be a monumental tactical victory. And Marcus Thorne's project, already off track due to his own incompetence, would be dead in the water. Linda, Sarah said, her voice now brimming with excitement. You are truly a force of nature. I want a presentation. Send me everything you can share without breaching any NDAs with Sterling, of course. I'll clear my afternoon schedule. Get here by 1 p.m. Consider it done, I said, and ended the call. My hands, once trembling with humiliation, were now steady with a quiet, exhilarating triumph. The next few hours were a whirlwind of activity. I selected the most impactful slides from our Sterling Innovations deck. I modified the client name, swapping Sterling Innovations for Innovent Health in all strategic contexts, but keeping the core design philosophy and strategic insights intact. I added a new introductory section emphasizing Innovent's innovative spirit and patient-centric mission. I created a powerful narrative around their potential to redefine healthcare, a narrative that subtly countered Sterling Innovations' outdated, profit-driven image. I made sure to emphasize the seamless transition and accelerated timeline this unique opportunity presented. We weren't just a new agency. We were offering a completed, meticulously researched strategic masterpiece, custom-built for a rival. It was unprecedented and devastatingly effective. I emailed the comprehensive pitch deck to Sarah. My team, when I explained the strategic pivot to Innovent Health, were initially stunned, but then their eyes lit up with understanding. Mark, especially. He saw the bold audacity of it. He saw the tactical brilliance. He saw my quiet strength. Mom, he said, shaking his head in a mixture of awe and disbelief, Marcus Thorne is not going to know what hit him. This is brilliant. Brilliant, but a bit emotional, I said, a wry smile touching my lips. He laughed. Brilliant. Period. He now understood that my emotional intelligence, once a perceived weakness, was in fact my most potent strategic weapon. This was going to be a masterclass in professional revenge. And I was the one teaching it. Part 5. The masterstroke and the public unveiling the presentation to Sarah Chun and Innovent Health's executive leadership team that afternoon was arguably the most impactful of my career. The sheer audacity of offering a meticulously crafted, fully fleshed-out brand strategy that had been originally designed for their direct competitor was unprecedented. The tension in the room was palpable, a mix of intrigued curiosity and cautious skepticism. They wanted to see if this was too good to be true. I was about to prove it wasn't. I started my presentation not with glossy visuals, but with a stark strategic analysis of the modern healthcare market. I spoke of traditional giants like Sterling Innovations struggling to adapt, weighed down by legacy thinking and corporate inertia. I spoke of agile disruptors like Innovent Health, poised to redefine the future. Then, I unveiled our core concept, the human element in a smart city. I explained how, for Sterling Innovations, this meant linking their manufacturing prowess to sustainable urban development. For Innovent Health, I redefined it. It became about linking their AI-driven medical solutions to the profound human impact on health and well-being. I meticulously walked them through the research, the target audience analysis, the core messaging pillars. My passion, my energy, the very emotion Marcus Thorne had dismissed, infused every word. I showcased visuals that didn't just look futuristic, but evoked trust, compassion, and innovation. I pulled up comparison slides, subtly highlighting where their current branding was strong and where my proposed strategy would give them an undeniable edge. Imagine, I concluded, my voice resonating with conviction, a healthcare leader that speaks not just of technology, but of genuine human connection. A company whose visual identity truly embodies empathy, transparency, and accessible innovation. This isn't just about selling a drug or a piece of software. It's about building a bond. It's about becoming the trusted partner in an evolving world. This is the brand of Innovent Health. The room was silent. Robert Thompson, Innovent's chief marketing officer, a man known for his skepticism, nodded slowly. Sarah Chen's face, usually composed, radiated an intense, quiet excitement. Linda, Sarah finally said, her voice firm. This isn't just a rebrand. This is a complete strategic roadmap. It's brilliant. It's audacious. And it is exactly what we need. When can you start? We can start immediately, I said. Harper Creative can have a full working model ready for your review in 2 weeks. And if approved, we can be ready for a public launch in 6 weeks. Robert Thompson's eyes widened. 6 weeks? That's unprecedented for a rebrand of this scale. The groundwork is already laid, Mr. Thompson, I replied, a small, knowing smile touching my lips. And Harper Creative prides itself on efficient, strategic execution. The decision was unanimous. Innovent Health engaged Harper Creative on a multi-million-dollar contract, signing on the dotted line within 24 hours. The terms were generous, the timeline aggressive, and the objective was clear. Redefine Innovent Health's brand before Sterling Innovations could even get their revised brand strategy out of internal review. The very next day, I drafted an email to Marcus Thorne. It was short, precise, and utterly devoid of emotion. Dear Mr. Thorne, it began. Due to a fundamental misalignment in strategic vision and an unresolvable difference in working philosophies, Harper Creative has made the decision to terminate our engagement with Sterling Innovations, effective immediately. We wish you and your team the best in your continued rebranding efforts. Sincerely, Linda Harper, Principal, Harper Creative. I hit send. Then I logged into the shared Sterling Innovations portal and, with a few precise clicks, downloaded all our work to a secure drive and then deleted all project files. I didn't delete my intellectual property, but I made sure Marcus Thorne would have nothing but a blank screen. He had told me I was too emotional to lead the project. He was about to learn that my strategic anger had just made him lose his most important project. The ripple effects were immediate and devastating. Sterling Innovations, an old, lumbering giant, was notoriously slow to adapt. Marcus Thorne's new broom approach had alienated internal teams, and his rebranding project, already stalled due to internal politicking, suddenly had no lead creative agency. Their deadlines were missed. Their progress reviews were disastrous. Marcus Thorne, the man hired to shake things up, was now overseeing a catastrophic failure. 2 months later, the press releases hit. Innovent Health unveiled its stunning new brand identity and strategic vision with a massive media blitz. It was bold. It was fresh. It was incredibly well received. My work was showcased across Forbes, TechCrunch, and the Wall Street Journal. Innovent Health's stock price surged. The CEO, Anya Sharma, in every interview, spoke glowingly of Harper Creative and of me. Linda Harper, she told Forbes, is a visionary. Her unique blend of strategic rigor and authentic human understanding is exactly what the modern market needs. She transformed our vision. The humiliation for Marcus Thorne and Sterling Innovations was absolute. Not only had their rebranding project stalled, but their biggest competitor had now effectively co-opted the future they themselves had aspired to, powered by the very firm Marcus had so casually dismissed. The too emotional woman had just publicly embarrassed him and his entire department on a global stage. the irony was exquisite. Part 8. The weight of unacknowledged wisdom. The vindication I felt was not a giddy triumph, but a quiet, deeply satisfying calm. My office in the West Loop, now bustling with new hires for Harper Creative and overflowing with exciting new projects, hummed with a renewed energy. My team, witnessing the strategic brilliance of the Innovent Health pivot, looked at me with a new awe. Mark, my son, was genuinely impressed, proud. He had been an active participant in this strategic pivot, understanding its full tactical genius. His respect for me, as a professional, had never been higher. He was my most ardent champion. The industry whispered. The story of Sterling Innovations' bungled rebrand and Innovent Health's swift, brilliant counterstrike became a cautionary tale in Chicago's corporate circles. Marcus Thorne, I heard through various grapevines, was under immense pressure. His reputation as a disruptor had imploded, revealing him instead as an arrogant liability. He no longer led major projects. His emails about strategic brand alignment and optimizing messaging now rang hollow, echoing his condescending dismissal of my own passionate insights. His words, which he had used to cut me down, had become the very instruments of his undoing. My personal life reflected my professional ascendancy. The subtle sting of casual ageism, the feeling of being overlooked in favor of younger, fresher perspectives, slowly dissolved. My clarity, fueled by years of navigating dismissals from David, from my children's initial assumptions, from my brother's entitlement, and now from Marcus Thorne's arrogance, had sharpened into an unyielding self-assurance. I was 54, and I was thriving. My relationships with other women in the industry deepened. They saw me as a role model, a testament to the power of wisdom, resilience, and unapologetic self-worth. They understood the subtle battles fought in boardrooms and meeting rooms, the quiet dismissals faced by women of a certain age. They knew the exhaustion of being told you're too much for simply having passion. My emotional energy, once a weakness to be controlled, was now a source of vibrant, magnetic power. I sometimes saw Marcus Thorne in passing at industry events in downtown Chicago. He never approached me. He would avoid eye contact, his face usually etched with a look of suppressed tension. His presence, once intimidating, now felt small, almost pathetic. The man who had mocked my passion, who had called me too emotional, was now living the silent consequences of his own prejudice. He had tried to sideline me. I had simply stepped onto a larger stage, and his attempts to control the narrative had utterly failed. My revenge was not in his fall, but in my soaring. My strength was not in crushing him, but in unapologetically flourishing in his absence. The emotional label, once a wound, was now a badge of honor. It was my secret weapon, the fire that burned away compliance and left only ruthless, strategic clarity. The voice that had been told to modulate its passion now resonated with undeniable authority. My expertise, once unacknowledged, was now irrefutable. And the project, the one he said I was too emotional to lead, had become my magnum opus. Part 9. The power of true emotional intelligence. I stood in the vast, modern conference room at Innovent Health, looking out over the gleaming expanse of the Chicago skyline. The project, my project, our project, was a monumental success. Innovent Health's new brand identity, born from my strategic vision, was recognized globally as a paradigm shift in healthcare communication. It was compelling, authentic, and resonated deeply with audiences worldwide. The success felt exhilarating, yes, but more profoundly, it felt utterly vindicating. It had begun with a casual dismissal. Too emotional. A common, age-old weapon used to diminish a woman's assertiveness, her passion, her very drive. They try to convince you that your strength is a flaw, your genuine emotion a sign of weakness. They tell you to control it, to suppress it, to be more rational. But what Marcus Thorne and others like him failed to understand was that my emotional intelligence, my ability to read the unspoken cues, to understand human motivations beyond the numbers, to genuinely connect with the underlying consumer psyche, was not a weakness. It was my greatest strength. It was the very foundation of my strategic brilliance. Menopause had not made me irrational, it had made me unflinchingly honest. It burned away my patience for superficiality. It clarified my vision, stripping away the noise to reveal the true core of things. This clarity allowed me to see Marcus Thorne not as a formidable opponent, but as a man blinded by his own arrogance and prejudice. It allowed me to transform his insult into the fuel for my most strategic professional coup. The too emotional woman didn't just walk away. She walked away with the project, the client, and ultimately, a reputation that eclipsed his own. My ultimate victory was not just professional. It was deeply personal. It was the absolute, unshakable certainty that my voice, my ideas, my experience, and my very emotional being were not just valid. They were invaluable. Part 10. The Leadership of Unapologetic Authenticity. I am now 55. Harper Creative is thriving. My main studio in the West Loop is a buzzing hub of creativity and innovation. My team has grown to 15 talented designers and strategists, many of them women, many in their 40s and 50s, who share my philosophy of strategic creativity and authentic leadership. I am now sought after not just for my design work, but for my insights on leadership, on mentorship, on navigating change in a constantly evolving world. My life in Chicago, balance between my vibrant professional world and my tranquil home in Ukrainian village, is exactly as I designed it. I take long walks along the riverfront, absorbing the city's pulse, or find quiet moments of reflection in my garden. My relationships with Mark and Emily, now both settled and navigating their own professional and family challenges, are stronger and more honest than ever. They seek my advice not just on career strategy, but on resilience, on setting boundaries, on understanding themselves. They truly value my emotional intelligence, as Emily now calls it. My grandchild, Clara, is a vibrant joy, and my time with her is cherished, freely given, and deeply fulfilling. The ghost of David, the man who once dismissed me as useless and too emotional, has faded into complete irrelevance. He is still in Chicago, somewhere, living his quiet, diminished life, utterly unaware of the vibrant, expansive reality I now inhabit. My victory wasn't just about outsmarting him or Marcus Thorne. It was about outliving their definitions of me. It was about proving that my true power lay not in external validation, but in my own unwavering belief in my worth. My journey through divorce, family struggles, and workplace battles has forged me into a leader who is unafraid to be authentically herself. The silent changes of menopause, the subtle shifts in my body and mind, were not a decline. They were a refining fire, burning away all pretense, leaving only courage, clarity, and an unapologetic commitment to my own truth. I am a leader, not because I am unemotional, but because I allow my authentic self, my experience, and yes, my deeply felt emotions to inform every strategic decision. This, I realized, is the true meaning of power. And it is limitless. Linda turns to address the camera directly. She is seated comfortably in a stylish, modern conference room, a prestigious award or framed magazine cover on the wall behind her. She looks confident, serene, and radiates the quiet power of a woman completely in her element. Have you ever had your voice dismissed, your passion trivialized, or your contributions undermined in the workplace because someone called you too emotional? Has your genuine engagement been misinterpreted as a weakness, simply because you're a woman, or because of your age? Tell me your story in the comments below. Let's talk about how we reclaim our professional power, how we turn condescending labels into fuel for our greatest triumphs, and how we prove that true leadership requires authenticity, not suppression. Your story of finding your voice and your power in a challenging environment might be the exact inspiration someone else needs to do the same. And if you're ready to prove that your emotional intelligence is your greatest strategic advantage, if you're ready to claim your rightful place at the top, make sure you subscribe to the Silent Change After 50. We are building a community where women over 50 are breaking barriers, redefining success, and proving that the true leaders are often the ones who refuse to be silenced. Join us.